Hey, hello, Donald Mowat. My first question to you today is, besides we got the how are you out of the way. The first question is, how has life changed, or hasn't it changed since being nominated for an Oscar for your work on Dune?
Um, well, I think first of all, that was incredible. It was just incredible, and um, it just you know working on that movie, life changer. But it just I think more than anything, to have a career that has lasted 30, I don't know, 37 years for me is the award. Um, because now that I kind of look back on it and think it's really not about that, it's more that I've made my career, my life, my living, and paid the bills for my entire adulthood doing what I love doing is the Oscar. I know it's a little schmaltzy and sentimental, but that really matters to me more than anything.
I don't think it's that schmaltzy. I think it's important for especially younger people who want to get into the industry to hear that they should really love the process, not the end results.
I'm glad you said it and not me, because that seems to be an issue now that people, a lot of people, it's about celebrity and kind of fame and fortune, and it so isn't, because I never got, certainly below the line people, you don't get into the business to make money. You do it because you love to do something. And I love working, doing, the discipline, the craft, and making movies and TV was what I love to do. So to be able to make your living at something you love, very, very few people get to say that.
This is
And
true.
very few people do,
Yeah,
and I'm aware of it. I mean, even when you don't always get to work on something that you love,
mhm.
and so for that, I'm really grateful. And then to get nominated, or to be close to that it's icing on the cake.
And there's also Dune 2 coming out, so
Right. Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
might get nominated. You might win for that, right?
One, I think one was it for me. That was you know um
Oh, you didn't return for Dune 2?
No, I did, but I think for
Oh,
me, it's not even about that. I think that was
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Lightning, doesn't strike twice necessarily, and it
Right.
doesn't. You know what I mean? I wasn't looking at it that way at all. I think
Gotcha.
that, to be recognized the one time was it for me. It felt like that was what mattered.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So you talked about enjoying getting artistic fulfillment and enjoying working on film and television. Did you enjoy the Covenant? What was that experience like for you?
Immensely, because that's more the kind of job I love working on. People, forget that you don't, those huge studio movies with lots and, come with a lot of headaches too. I mean, to be fair, I think that's
Yeah.
why, Blade Runner 2049, love being part of that, love being part of Dune 1. But I like going back to the things that I loved working on where I started, which were much smaller films, which
Mm.
are not, you have smaller problems. There sometimes you end up with better crews, better they're smaller because you can manage it better. You can have a smaller crew, smaller cast. You don't have the trappings of all that stardom and all that. And I'm not saying it in a kind of I'm not being critical. I just think it
Mm.
brings me back to my roots of how I started in the business, where you have a small hair makeup crew. The Covenant was great, working with a wonderful cast. Guy Ritchie. We shot. It was quick. It was just quick. We were 7, 8 weeks in Spain,
Nice.
to work with Don Salim and Jake. And it looks simple, but it wasn't. It was action. It was a great story. Some great new actors. I love working with Jake. I think Guy did a great job with all the action. And it's a movie I'd go see, and people enjoyed it. They loved it, and it was an important story. And I like seeing those types of films.
Oh yeah, absolutely. What were you trying to accomplish with your makeup in this film?
Well, you know, uh, though, you think on paper it looks like this could be, you could get into some traps, because I know Guy and his crew, they work together a lot.
Mm.
What they were very careful was, we were really in the world of, I know we're tired of hearing about COVID, but we couldn't have a film with a lot of changes, makeup, hair changes. We had to really work in our 10 hours. And, people have to really understand, if we were going to make a movie in COVID, which I've done quite a few now,
Mhm.
we had to shoot in 10 hours on location in Spain. So it had to be fairly straightforward, which we did, and make it as realistic as possible within the confines of that, which is what we did. So, very simple, make it real, make it interesting. And that's what we did. We eliminated anything that would require makeup changes throughout the day, block shooting, and we shot on time, no reshoots, couple of stunt wigs, couple of, little blood things, but within the realm of what Guy could shoot in 10 hours. Full, everybody got COVID on that movie at one point or another. And I did. It was my first time, my first and last. In week one, I could barely get a crew. It was very difficult. I think people listening, I was tried desperately. I had a very junior crew on that film. I couldn't get a crew. Very hard to travel, leave home during pandemic to go to another country. Some people weren't even vaccinated properly at that point. So it was a very challenging time to get people. And I think it was great that Guy was able to make this movie, and great cast.
So Jake Gyllenhaal's your guy. You've done makeup on him a lot over
yes, many times.
Many times. And I remember the first time we talked to him was really interesting for me to learn how you kind of made him look dirty and not as handsome in Nightcrawler. For the Covenant, what were you kind of like? Was he supposed to be like a stoic warrior, or what? How do you describe how he looks in the movie?
Well, I think in Covenant we just have a moment that kind of he's a guy. I mean, he is the guy. But I think Guy Ritchie wanted him to look. We went through a little the moment where he's injured, without giving away too much for people who've not seen it, and where he goes through a moment where it wasn't extreme, but extreme enough that you see him the way he is, but he's still Jake, looking pretty good. He comes back. We have this story, Dar Salim. I think that it tells the story without going, again, within our 10 hours, looking pretty good. He's a real guy. This existed. These guys existed. And I love working with Jake. He's pretty persuasive. I didn't know if it's a job I could do for a number of reasons. I was going to prep the other movie. I got COVID. I mean, I got COVID, and I didn't know if I could do it. It was really tricky, but I did. And Jake is persuasive, and he's one of the best actors I've ever worked with. And he's a constant, impresses me. And Dar Salim, just incredible performance. And Guy Ritchie, his films have always intrigued me, that he's able to make these films, and he's quick and able to do things. So I thought, I'm on board. And they were willing to wait for me for that week that I was sick, and having a junior crew that were brand new. I thought, okay, well, let's do this.
Guy Ritchie's, especially when I was growing up, was so huge for me. Movies like Snatch and Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels, just so cool. And he's been doing a lot of good stuff over the years. What's he like to watch as a creator?
I think they're very interesting because they have it down. They're different. They're not conventional at all. But in some ways, it's ready. It's not, you don't have a lot, you barely have a meeting. There's not a lot of pre-production. I think you go with, they hire people, you sort of do it. It's not for everybody. I'll be honest, because you have to be resourceful in the sense that you're independent. You run you go in. Again, it's not a huge crew. I got to work with a lot of newer people, a great costume designer, DP, Ed Weil did a great job, but it feels like you're relatively free creatively, but you have to work within the confines of, this is not going to be a lot of prep with 12 meetings. You are going to work this, and you got to be commando. And I thought that was great. Like, you got to be working. It's sort of independent filmmaking, and I kind of like it. I got to say, it makes me feel young again, and the sense of come on, do it, shoot it. And so it's not for everybody, and you can't be a sissy. You got to be in there and willing to, you can't be too precious about things. You got to let certain things go. But I think he's very innovative at what he does, and very good at what he does.
That sounds like fun. It sounds like doing improv comedy, in a sense. You have to be very spontaneous.
Well,
in sort of course. Yeah.
Of course,
That's
but
cool.
he's a pro. I mean, he knows what he wants. He certainly knows what he wants, and you come into it, and I think that it made for a very good environment. It's not a serious, heavy environment at all,
Yeah.
and I thought it was refreshing for me to come into that and be a newcomer into a world that's very much his team of people, and they invited me in, and I was a guest, and Jake was great, and Dar Salim, who I've seen on a couple of things because I watch a lot of the Scandinavian and Danish television. So he
Nice.
was, and all of the young new actors from the UK, I thought played American very well. And uh, it was great. It was very different for me. And working with a Spanish crew takes you out of your safety zone a little bit too. And that's it.
I think that's great. It's great. It's great. You can still spice things up a little bit. Sometimes you see movies that are incredibly from Hollywood, visually competent, and the craftsmanship is just impeccable. But sometimes it's just fun to watch something kind of like a John Waters movie or something kind of dirty, with some spontaneity or pizzazz. Like I had a friend, like a scholar actually. He said, I don't like Stanley Kubrick movies because they're too perfect. It's fun to have some stuff that's kind of loose
Well, there is
and
such a
a
thing.
little punk rock, right?
I agree. Sometimes, I mean, it's very hard, especially in what I do, because the world of hair and makeup and can be too perfect, and it's very, very hard, and it's hard to evoke that and explain that to people. Whether it's people up and in what I do in the world of hair and makeup, there is such a thing, but you also want people to be appealing, but also in the sense of authenticity of looking real,
Yeah,
but not like their television soap opera. Um, but there's something about the story. You can't forget that this was a true, based on events that happened, and it was pretty tragic what happened. We can't lose track of that and be distracted by something that is too perfect. It was a very I don't want to misuse words and not, but it was terribly important, and a terrible thing that happened to these people, and
yeah,
that's something we don't want to forget. And I think that this was a very important thing to tell and be a little part of that.
yeah. It's interesting. I don't know how many movies there have been about like big movies about the war in Afghanistan. There was The Lone Survivor. I remember when that came out, but we haven't gotten too many like because you think about like Vietnam movies and we all know Apocalypse Now and Platoon and stuff like that. Why do you think there have been like less movies focused on the war and terror?
Well, I mean, I'm certainly not qualified to talk about that so much, other than that, look, they're heavy, they're political, they're touchy, they're
Yeah.
very sensitive subjects, and they're current, and they're very current, and but for me, I mean, I haven't really worked on that many films of subject matter other than many years ago, Three Kings, which was a great film to be a
Oh, I
part
love
of,
Three
and
Kings.
something I was very proud to be a part of. And many years ago with Mark Wahlberg and David O. Russell, George Clooney and Ice Cube,
Yeah.
Spike Jones, and that was 20, it's almost 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was a timely film that also a lot of people didn't quite know how to take at the time. So
Hmm. Yeah,
I
because it
think
was
this was
funny.
also a film that was, I don't know, yeah, pro this, anti-war and pro-American. It had a lot.
Yeah.
And I thought, Jake and Dar were excellent, excellent chemistry, and something we don't see a lot, and simple, and yet it has the action. I know people always want, it's got something that people still want to see, and it has movie quality to it. Where I do understand people still want to see movies, and it was and still is on the big screen at AMC and the Chinese theater here in LA,
Oh yeah.
and that's encouraging. It's encouraging
Oh yeah.
that people was sold out, people at the Academy, and people went to see it, and that's very encouraging for filmmakers alike, and audiences that do want to see movies that are relevant to them.
Oh hell yeah! I want to ask you about that. What do you think now that we're sort of getting out of the pandemic stage of COVID? Do you think um, people are going to go back to the movie theaters? Because I go to the movie theaters, and it's just not how it was. And I really miss the communal experience of having the house packed. There's nothing like it, really.
Yeah, I I think it will. Based on it's an experience I love to have. I still go to the movies.
Nice.
Um, I love going to the movies. I enjoy the communal experience, but I still read books and I still write things down and I still have an address book. I'm the old fashioned, but people went to see this film, and I know it's great to see it on TV as well, which will come soon.
Hmm.
Uh, but people did go, and when I saw it, the theaters were still busy, not like you're saying, but I do think it's like live music is huge again, and
Yeah,
concerts are back, and I
classes are
think Michael
back.
Jackson is performing tonight. So I'm a very hopeful person. I think it's just going to be different. Maybe the way
Hmm.
restaurants have come back a little bit. We're in a crisis, the cost of living and all that other, there's a lot happening. I'm hardly an expert on these things, but just from the way I see it, it's just
Yeah.
different things. We have to encourage people to go back. We have to make a way for people to go back and get out and encourage people.
There's nothing like it. There's nothing like the big screen communal experience. I really hope maybe in a year or two that things bounce back, because we really like. I think it's good for people.
It's good for people and it's good for everybody because it's, what do they call that domino effect? It's at retail or going to stores and how it helps other businesses. People forget that we don't have people reminding, the old timers that are gone that would, how other communities blossom and flourish when people do go to theaters and how it helps restaurants and coffee shops and everything else. It's the same as films coming to communities to film. And I think it's really important. We need people to remind people that's what happens. When you have something that goes on in a community, when a concert comes in, people buy things, they go to the stores and restaurants and things.
Oh yes. Well, Donald, thanks so much for your time. This is my third time talking to you. I feel so privileged.